What if I told you I can triple your current leases right now and increase your profits on all your rental properties? Simple, easy transactions, can be done by everybody. Everybody in the Atlanta area is doing it, but at what cost? What cost to the community? What cost to the individuals that are renting these locations? Today, we're here with Gretchen Kornutik with Salt Air Stays Consulting. Had to practice that a few times, so thanks, Gretchen, for letting me get through that. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Darin Hunter. Gretchen, first and foremost, PadSplit. It's a topic of discussion today.
It is.
Why don't you educate, for those that are watching, have never heard of PadSplit?
Yeah.
Educate us on what that is.
Yeah, I mean, so PadSplit, sometimes you look at the world and you see advertisements. A lot of people, the general public, are kind of bucking that into the whole Airbnb world. And it's not. It's really boarding houses, rooming houses within our community, nestled right in our community without any type of licensing, registries, or kind of oversight. And it's dangerous.
So right now, we all know, we hear about it on a regular basis.
Yes.
There is a demand for housing, a demand for affordable housing.
Yes.
Now, if you go to the PadSplit website, you do any research on YouTube about PadSplit,
Yep.
they're solving the affordability problem.
Yes, they absolutely are. Now, let's not be crazy about this. They absolutely are filling a need, and that's why they're so successful.
Yeah.
I sat down with a gentleman, I'm going to use his name as E, who is higher up in the PadSplit world. These guys are smart. They figured out a need in our community. And but at what cost, right? At what cost to our communities? These folks are our bartenders. There are people who are cashiers. They're the folks in our unseen population, if you will, and they need a place to live. They're also our kids. Our kids are coming out of college with student debt, and they can't afford to live somewhere. So they are absolutely fulfilling a need. It's just the wrong way.
What's the right way?
Yeah, the right way is for our governments and our communities to come together. I think one of the steps that Atlanta did recently is they said that you could put ADUs in your backyards. That is another possibility, right? There's a lot of stuff. It's not an overnight solution.
Sure.
But you can't ruin our neighborhoods, whether they're high-end neighborhoods, low-end neighborhoods, based on just packing and stacking. And there's a lot of things that people are doing within these properties that are simply unsafe, and they're not good for our systems, for our infrastructure.
So how do we, as an investor, you see this opportunity where you have a 3-2, let's say, you're getting, it's called $1,500 a month, $1,700 a month, and you have the opportunity to invest $10,000, $15,000, switch up the floor plan, and then all of a sudden you're making $4,500 a month gross on these, you went from a 2.3 to a 2.6 or a 2.7. How do you discourage that? I mean, that's from an investor standpoint, who doesn't want to take advantage of that? We're in a capitalistic country, right? Who doesn't want to take advantage of that?
Yeah. So Again, I totally agree with you. For folks who don't understand PadSplit, they're taking the master bedroom and they're turning that into a living room. Then they're taking the garage and they're putting up a fake wall and putting in 2 bedrooms. If you have a 4-bedroom house, they're taking the living room and they're throwing up a wall in the middle of the living room and using the dining room as the common space. Person in bedroom A doesn't know person in bedroom B. That's a problem. And then you've got, all of these different scenarios. But if you're an investor, I'm going to correct you actually. So the average number is $186 a week. Guys, forgive me, that number is about 6 months old, so it may have changed, but that's what it was when I sat down and talked to these guys. $186 a week, you're looking at close to $10,000 in gross rents. How do you walk away from that? That is huge.
No doubt.
I've talked to a couple of folks and they said, well, if they ever discover me, I'm just going to sell the property and take down the walls.
Right.
That's an option, but is it the safe option? What happens when there's a fire or a sex offender in one of these properties and something really happens?
Wait a minute. If you go to the website, they're doing their due diligence. They're running background checks.
Yeah, so do we know that? Do we know what that background check is? Are they looking them up on Facebook to see if they're a real life person?
I mean, if you go to PadSplit, right, they claim to have all the checks and balances in place. And I'm no host. I've never been a host. I don't know what the host is privy to personally.
Yeah.
Are they privy to those? Do you know I'm asking. Do you know the answer to that?
I don't have full access to it, but I'll tell you what I did do. I went in as a different persona. I listed my own house, but I didn't sign the contract so I could see the contract. And I also went in as a guest. And I used a fake name, and I wasn't stopped.
Interesting. So credit checks, they weren't asking for credit checks. They weren't asking for anything of that nature. No background history, no licensing.
No, I mean, they
they
asked for IDs. I showed the back of my ID. I didn't show the front of it. I loaded it into the system, and voila.
So clearly the securities in place, the checks and balances in place, aren't necessarily there, or they're being at least portrayed that they are, and maybe not taking place. Is that?
I would say that they probably are taking place to a certain extent, but this is a company that has gone from a 2% profit share in the market share to probably within this space maybe an 8 to 9%. Wow. Very quickly.
It's massive growth.
Massive growth.
Yeah.
How could you possibly keep up with that?
Right.
And so they're probably doing the best they can. But my big issue with it is just the way that they're doing it, right? If our neighborhoods don't understand that you've got 10 times the amount of trash, excuse my French, but 10 times the amount of poop going down the drains, that's a problem on our infrastructure and our houses. Great for the investors. Almost great for the people who are living there because they need a place to live.
Yeah. But is it a home?
No, it's not. It's a boarding house.
Boarding house.
It's a boarding house, and it's a boarding house in an HOA. It's a boarding house in a community where people, expect a certain amount of decorum or, right to enjoyment. That's a constitutional right within all of our guidelines on mortgage documents, on lease documents. Everything is quiet enjoyment. How could you possibly have quiet enjoyment in that?
Well, so far in my neighborhood, at least at the moment, there's no PadSplit that I'm aware of. Now, let's talk about that. But HOAs, I mean, you mentioned HOA, they're in neighborhoods typically that are not in HOAs for the most part. But it sounds like you're inferring that they are making their way into some of these neighborhoods.
Yeah, they are.
And so either the HOA or the local municipalities, aren't either aware or aren't paying attention as much as maybe they should be. Do we have a solution? How do we correct this? I mean, because again, it is solving the affordability housing issue. It is to a degree giving people an opportunity to live in a house and not on the streets or on a park bench or whatever. I mean, everybody should have a house or should have a roof over their head.
They should.
But yeah, what's the cost to the community itself?
That's exactly it. Yeah. The other thing is that it's all grouped together, right? All of these new industries. If we think the Airbnbs of the world didn't exist before 2009, it was vacation rental homes, and they were on the ocean or they were on a lake in the mountains. And so then all of a sudden you've got this Airbnb world kind of just infiltrating, and then the nomadic lifestyle of COVID just exacerbated all of it.
Right.
Everyone came down to the south, so we know that. During that time, we also had arbitrage, which was going into neighborhoods, into HOAs, into condo associations that people weren't aware of. It's the same thing. It's not hard to do it if you don't know it's there.
Right.
And so it's making people aware of what they're doing and what that risk is. Is that risk that we're hurting our neighborhoods? Is it hurting our tax income and the towns that we're trying to create in the corrections? Or is it a benefit? It may solve itself out, and there may be zoning regulations that come into play that allow this, but with safety, right? I mean, if you're putting a wall up in a garage, you don't have fire things in place. You don't have easements and all of those things to keep people safe.
So for the most part, are the infrastructure changes are not being permitted? Is that safe to assume?
Oh, 100% it's not being permitted.
Yeah.
I would challenge somebody who's actually doing the full PadSplit model to show me where they've got those permits through the county. I can't imagine. And you're right. HOAs versus outside of HOAs. Different areas in town where you don't have heavy building requirements, building permit laws, things of that nature. But we do have to fix the affordable housing 100%.
Sure.
This isn't the way to do it.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, does PadSplit have a place in our communities?
I do think it does. I think the buildings are built correctly. It's interesting. My husband and I have looked at all different things because of tiny homes and cottage homes and barn dominiums and PadSplit and all of these things for housing. And we've become a creative society.
Sure.
It's really cool. And then you go and you look at where they're building. So you've got the D.R. Hortons of the world building these huge communities. Those workers who are in those communities have no place to stay.
Right.
We have a battery plant going up just north of Cartersville, up in that area. There are people living in tents in people's backyards.
Right.
That is happening right now.
No doubt.
Because of the housing. So, yes, there is a place, but, what is it? Is it maybe a dormitory style warehouse living? Absolutely. That could be easy to build, 100% easy to build and cost effective if somebody tackles it.
So recently, Atlanta area changed some of their laws and requirements for Airbnbs.
Yes.
I mean, I think everybody knows about the big change that took place in New York and in within the city of New York, where I think, I don't know all the details of it, but literally you had to be in the house with whoever is renting out that particular house or room or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think it's gone to that extent, but some rules have changed in the Atlanta area. So this has become, at least from my perception, an exit strategy for a lot of folks that have had Airbnbs and now either, don't necessarily can't make the income that they were making through Airbnb. So now this just seems like a super easy way to transition that house with some investment, of course, to make the infrastructure changes to turn it into a PadSplit.
Yeah.
And PadSplit is, I just watched a video on PadSplit talking. They think this is the most amazing thing that's ever happened, and they are the answer to affordable housing.
They are an answer without all of the cramming it in, right? They really are. And I know that in talking to them directly, they've kind of compared themselves to the Ubers, right? We all, why would you ever get into a car that somebody else is driving and you don't know who this person is? I think there is a metamorphosis that's going to happen. And it will be interesting to watch for sure. As far as the regulations, right, you've got New York. Atlanta absolutely is very close to that New York stuff. Atlanta, you can only have an Airbnb style property, short-term rental, and be very careful because the definition of short-term rental changes from state to state and county to county. It is a very different thing. You can't just set it and forget it. So people dove into this market and into this environment and said, I'm going to buy these up and I'm going to make all this money.
Sure.
And some areas are saturated. The truth of the matter is they're not saturated. They just don't have investors who want to work at it, who want to work to fill it. You've got some investors who've got 20% occupancy. You're never going to make money on that. And you've got others that are at 95 and 100% occupancy because they care and they're doing it right. And so in the Atlanta market, it really was affordable housing that kind of pushed it. But the number one reason we have these regulations is the hotel lobby.
Right.
We have taken a market share from that business. And they are throwing everything they can at these zoning boards, city councils, et cetera. And they're writing these regulations that are not constitutionally sound. That's it. They're not. And if the neighbors and the investors and the homeowners would get together, they could probably knock a lot of this regulation out, as they've done in multiple counties in Florida.
So, Gretchen, let's take a step back.
Yeah.
You know a significant amount about the short-term rental market.
I do.
Explain how and why you know all this.
It was an accident. So I was an acquisitions director, asset manager for about 4,500 properties. And we were, during the crash, I was there on the auction block on Super Tuesday, buying up houses, renovating them flipping them into hedge funds, getting more investor money. And so I built up a great network of wholesalers and realtors and just great people for years through the crash. And in 2013, I got a phone call from a wholesaler who said, "Hey, I've got this house. I need you to get up from your desk and come now." And I said, "Dan, I'll send something." "No, you get up from your desk." So I grabbed my business partner, Chris. The two of us got in the car and we flew down to this house. And it was a hoarder house on the ocean in South Ponte Vedra. And we bought it. We bought it in 20 minutes. We only had 15 minutes in the house. And short story is we renovated it. It's a much longer story, but we renovated it, got it on the market for sale. And right before closing, Hurricane Matthew hit. And I sat on that deck and cried. And I thought, oh my God, what just happened? We've got millions of dollars wrapped up in this thing. What are we going to do? And that house is how I started back then. And that's when Airbnb was just starting. They were still college kids in London or New York in flats. They weren't, nobody knew what it was at that point. Sure. And I went looking for a mentor. I knew that the general public, including myself, thought that real estate agents could teach and explain short-term rentals, vacation rentals, whatever you want to call it at that time. And I couldn't find somebody who could teach me, who was a really good person. I talked to a couple of big companies.
So when you say a good person, not just after the greed, not just greedy for the profits.
It's the greed. And unfortunately, I think everybody needs to make the money.
Sure.
I am 100% for capitalism, but doing it correctly. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to learn it, and I can do this better. And so I went sideways at that point, and the rest is history. And so I've been doing it for years. We sold the company and started Saltair Stays Consulting in 2019, and been going ever since in 5 states. And
wow. How many properties do you manage?
Right now I manage 12, and I never want to be more than 50. I have an amazing referral network of other property managers now who do a really good job. There's no reason for me to do it all. I can make the money that I need to make, educating people, being with people I like, having a really substantially great team. I love my team. They've been with me for years, since the old company. And and so then I get to refer and be part of all these communities.
Love it.
I love it.
Awesome. Now, you've come into the Cherokee County community.
I have.
And you have made a huge splash. You're at every networking event. Now you're hosting all these different classes. Speak to the classes that you're teaching right now.
Yeah. So thank you for that. I love to educate myself. And one of the things that I did recently was I went to go learn new skills and realized, in tandem with a couple of other things, that I hate spending $100 and then being told halfway through something, now in order to get the information, you've got to spend $5,000 or become part of this family or be part of our network. And in tandem with that, I had people saying, "Hey, Gretchen, you've been teaching real estate agents for years. How do I get in your class? How do I do that?" And I said, shoot, I need to just do a class and teach people. So it is an introduction series to investment. I touch on all of the investment for people who really don't know what they don't know, and then answer those questions in very intimate styles, always under 20 people. It's a very minimal cost. It's always $150 per session. And that's it. There's no other sales pitch. And they get real actionable steps and somebody that they can call so that they can build passive income for their family.
Love it.
Yeah.
What would you give your number one piece of advice for somebody just getting into real estate investing?
Hands down, this one is easy. Get with the right professionals. Do not use your brother's uncle's cousin's realtor or your brother's uncle's cousin's mortgage broker. You need to get.
I'm your cousin's brother.
You need to be with someone like Darin. Ask the questions and make sure that that person actually knows what you're doing.
Sure.
You are getting into something that's going to make either the best difference or the worst difference in your entire life. And unfortunately, a lot of realtors don't want to do the legwork to learn it. And a lot of mortgage brokers don't either. You've got to be with people who understand the industry, understand what's available, understand what works for you.
Right.
And that is 100% the number one thing. And you don't actually need a property manager if you understand what you're purchasing and what your capacity is. Yeah.
Do you talk or educate or have a goal set for individuals that are getting into it, looking for certain cap rates, or do you evaluate their risk tolerance? I mean, for when I first started buying up real estate, I'm very low risk. I don't like a lot of risk. So I was all long-term rentals. Mm-hmm. Fix and flip scared me because I had too much money out on the line.
Yeah.
I never got into the Airbnb or the short-term rental, because I just had this thought of having to, even if I had a property management, just the additional headache of having to do all that.
Yeah.
Now, you and I spoke.
Yes.
That's kind of how this whole thing came about as far as PadSplit, because I didn't know anything about PadSplit, frankly, until you educated me a little bit on the phone. A 2-minute conversation turned into a 20 or 25-minute conversation.
Yeah.
And I was blown away that this was happening, and I had really no idea that was taking place. So I've been educating myself a little bit on it. But anyway, I digress.
That's okay.
Getting back to it, do you talk a little bit about or educate people on cap rates for long-term, short-term? I mean, do you get into that on the beginning stages of investing?
I don't. I can. Mm-hmm. I do offer mentorship packages if that's something they want. I really dive into vocabulary, education, understanding the difference between, hey, I see this house and I know it's a great deal, but what am I supposed to do with it? And looking at, okay, where is it located? Maybe it's a great flip property. Maybe it's a great midterm or short-term rental. No, maybe you should not do that. Maybe it should be a long-term rental. And having people decide and understand what that looks like. Those are first steps that people really need to understand before they get into those cap rates. I heavily, heavily advise them to work with a CPA and financial advisor. I think it's so interesting, the people who are scared to get with those professionals. Yeah. And those initial conversations don't cost anything.
No, they don't. I want to talk about that real quick, because over the years, I've been buying up real estate since 2008. I bought my first primary residence in 2005. Then I started up buying up properties in 2008. For probably a decade, I worked with probably the incorrect CPA. Yeah,
I have a great CPA.
Well, I have since learned to, not that I wasn't having these conversations, I started to educate myself and learn even more about taxes and where I was missing out. And it felt like I had to point out where I was missing out on savings. Yes. And that to me is inexcusable. And yet I let it continue. I myself let it continue. Until I finally was very common. Why did I even fall into that trap that I try to educate people to get out of? Yes. And it wasn't necessarily about being scared of the discussion, but I think it was more scared of making a change and the additional work that would go into that. So how important is a CPA when you're dealing with real estate?
Yeah, I mean, so it's massive. It's massive. Understanding, whether you want to be an S Corp or an LLC or a trust, those are CPA questions.
Sure.
And how big you want your portfolio to go. A CPA who says, okay, what do you want to do? And you say, I want to grow my portfolio. If that's where the question ends, it's the wrong CPA. Right. That CPA should be diving into what kind of disposable income are you looking for? Are you trying to grow generational wealth? Are they using words that include depreciation and all of those things that go with holding real estate? That ties into then children's education funds and what things you already have now. Do you have a self-directed IRA? Are you doing it through a 1031 exchange? If a CPA is not using those words, you need to just go ahead and get up and move to the next one.
Right. Yeah, the big eye-opener for me was the cost segregation. Yeah. When I did a cost segregation, which basically puts every single piece of the property that you own on a different depreciation schedule, it blew my mind how much of a tax savings I was able to take advantage of. And once I saw that, then, of course, my mind started working like, okay, yeah, I could save here. And then in partnership with my CPA now, really able to take advantage of the savings that I should have been taking advantage of for years. So learn from my mistakes, listen to Gretchen, find a CPA that will work with you and understands real estate. And I think it's important to find somebody that actually understands real estate, right?
Yes.
Not just who's going to do there and do you have W-2 income and that's it. And if you've got multiple properties, you got rentals, like you said, the S corps, whether you're putting on a Schedule E, you need to be speaking with somebody that understands all of that. And most should, but like you said, some don't take the time to even educate themselves when that's really their purpose. It blows my mind that this is not what we were here to talk about.
That's okay. But it is. But it's all part of the equation, right? It's so funny when I go to my networking events and people are like, oh, how am I going to deal with her? Like, what does she have to do with me? I'm thinking, seriously, like CPAs, financial planners, mortgage brokers, real estate agents, junk haulers, contractors. Yeah. I mean, everything really touches my industry.
Yes.
And that CPA is massive.
It is. It is.
Yeah, it really is. And having that conversation. If you are somebody who's a people pleaser and you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings,
right,
that's a problem. But you have to say, okay, I can either break up this conversation now and be polite, great, thanks, and then later on say, I don't think that we're a perfect match, but thank you so much for your time, and I have somebody else I can refer to you.
Right.
You can break up with somebody that way, but get with the right person.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ask the questions.
And that person will most likely pay referral fees, whether it's real estate, not mortgage broker, but different avenues. They'll pay to the previous person some sort of a referral fee so that they don't get their feelings hurt.
Sure.
It's about your investment,
right,
and it's what's best for you.
Yeah, we really got to change our mindset when we're thinking about our own money and keeping our own money.
Yes.
So, Gretchen, thank you so much for coming in. Thanks for the discussion. Where can people find you?
Really, the easiest way is just to go on Facebook. I am all over the place. My phone number is out there, guys. It's going to be attached to this video. I have a team of people. If it's not something I can answer or it's somebody else, I immediately connect you and refer you to them. And I just love people.
Yes, she does. And it shows because she's everywhere, all over Cherokee County and Florida and wherever else. Gretchen, thank you so much.
Yeah,
had a great
course.
time, great discussion. We'll put all of your information in the description below, including any links that we have to all your information, so we can help share and you can continue to educate everybody on the proper way to short-term rental or just grow your real estate portfolio the correct way.
Absolutely.
Well, that was another guaranteed interview with my girl Gretchen over here. We'll see you on the next one.